The allegations Meghan has made are simply not true. Her account does not reflect what actually happened, and it has led the public to a deeply misleading impression. That version of events has no basis in...
The convoy had arrived. The gates were secured. Behind Balmoral's stone walls, senior members of the royal family were preparing for one of the most important private summits in years. Then William noticed a face that was never meant to be there. He stopped walking, stared toward the entry line, and demanded an explanation. Minutes later, the prince canceled the entire gathering, leaving Harry furious, Charles blindsided, and the palace confronting a breach no one could dismiss. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles had approved the Balmoral summit because too many disputes remained dangerously unresolved. The gathering was meant to settle questions about royal duties, security access, private residences, and Harry's future within the family. A summit, in plain terms, was a private high-level meeting where sensitive decisions could be confronted directly. The king wanted calm. William demanded control. Every guest had to be personally cleared before entering. Vehicles moved through the restricted entrance. As protection officers checked registrations and aides compared names against a sealed list. That document was the approved record of who could enter, and any missing name became a security concern. William stood beside a senior officer reviewing arrivals when his expression hardened. He pointed toward one man waiting several places back. Julian Mercer was not on the list. The aide leaned closer and explained that Julian had arrived with Harry's party. William did not hesitate. No private associate had been authorized. Julian was more than a friend. He had helped the Duke prepare statements, arrange meetings, and communicate beyond palace channels. His presence suggested that Harry had brought an unofficial witness or strategist into a conversation meant to remain inside the royal family. William pulled the summit folder from beneath his arm and handed it to the aide. The folder contained the agenda, security instructions, and proposed agreements. "This meeting will not proceed," he said, making clear the guest list had been compromised. The order traveled quickly. Staff stopped moving. The estate doors remained closed. Charles received the news inside and set down his papers without speaking. Harry stepped from his vehicle moments later and saw Julian trapped behind the entry barrier. Confusion crossed his face before anger replaced it. He demanded to know why the summit had been stopped, but no aide answered. William was already walking toward him, his jaw set, prepared to ask whether his brother had deliberately brought an outsider into the family's most private reckoning. The cancellation had stunned everyone at Balmoral. But the real confrontation would begin when two brothers finally stood face to face, and neither was willing to retreat. To the waiting aides, Julian Mercer was simply an unauthorized name. To William, he represented something far more dangerous. An outsider standing at the threshold of the monarchy's most private conversation. To Harry, however, the same man was a trusted companion who had remained beside him when royal relationships collapsed. The confrontation at Balmoral was never truly about one person in an entry line. It was about loyalty, exclusion, memory, and which brother still believed the other could be trusted. William had come to the summit believing it might be the final chance to set clear boundaries before heavier royal responsibilities fell upon him. A summit was a private meeting where senior figures confronted decisions too sensitive for ordinary discussion. For the prince, privacy was not ceremony. It was the only ground on which trust with his younger brother could possibly be rebuilt. Harry had arrived carrying a very different fear. He expected a direct conversation about family access, his children's connection to Britain, and whether he still had any meaningful place inside the royal circle. The Duke felt exposed entering royal territory without someone from his own side nearby. Julian had stayed loyal during years of isolation, and that loyalty had become difficult for him to surrender. Harry stood beside his vehicle as an aide confirmed the gathering had been cancelled. His jaw tightened. He looked first toward Julian, then toward William, and the humiliation struck hard. Security officers, drivers, and household staff were all close enough to understand that the dispute had followed him to the gate. William remained controlled, but betrayal burned beneath the silence. He had agreed to meet his brother privately, not to speak while a Sussex confidant waited nearby with uncertain access to the discussion. The future king believed the terms had been changed without warning, and that belief made every previous promise feel fragile. Charles sat inside the drawing room as the news reached him. The king had hoped Balmoral's isolation would calm both sons, yet the untouched tea before him was already growing cold. He asked whether the visitor had been invited. His aide did not answer immediately, and the monarch understood the silence. Harry had mentioned bringing support in an earlier message, but he had never identified Julian by name. William had assumed the phrase meant a protection officer or legal representative who would remain outside. The Duke believed it gave him permission to bring a trusted companion. One word had created two meanings, and now both brothers treated their own interpretation as the truth. Charles ordered that his sons be brought inside separately before anger took control. But the instruction came too late. William was already moving toward Harry, and the Duke was walking to meet him. Years of resentment were now compressed into a few steps across the Balmoral Drive, but the true cause of William's distrust had begun long before Julian appeared at the gate. The face in the entry line did not create the mistrust at Balmoral, it merely awakened it. Months earlier, during a private dinner arranged to reopen communication between the brothers, a confidential remark had escaped the room before the plates were cleared. William never publicly accused Harry. The Duke never accepted responsibility. Yet from that evening forward, every meeting carried an invisible question. Who else was listening? And when Julian Mercer appeared at Balmoral, the prince believed the past was repeating itself. William and Harry had spent months attempting to restore contact through short calls, carefully worded messages, and conversations arranged by trusted aides. Neither brother felt safe enough to speak freely, but both understood what continued silence was doing to Charles. The king was caught between them, carrying the strain of a family division that had become impossible to hide. Balmoral offered what London could not. The Scottish estate had long given the royal family space from official pressure and public attention. The planned summit, a private high-level meeting intended to settle serious disagreements, would include only Charles, his sons, Catherine, and two senior household officials. Phones, personal advisors, and outside representatives were forbidden, because one uncontrolled detail could destroy the fragile process. 6 months earlier, William had met Harry for dinner at a secluded Windsor residence. The prince spoke carefully, but he offered something deeply personal. Charles was considering a confidential arrangement that would allow the Duke limited private visits with his children. It was not a public return. It was a quiet bridge back toward the family. Harry listened without interrupting. For one brief moment, the brothers seemed capable of speaking without anger. Then everything changed. Before midnight, Julian called the Duke and discussed the same proposal, using language almost identical to William's. The future king learned about that conversation the following morning, when a palace aide received a scheduling request referring to details that had only been spoken across the dinner table. Harry denied deliberately sharing the discussion. He said Julian had helped prepare earlier proposals and might have guessed what Charles was considering. But when the Duke refused to show his messages, William heard only another wall being raised between them. William responded in writing. He placed a handwritten instruction inside the summit preparation file, stating that no friend, strategist, publicist, or personal consultant connected to either brother could enter Balmoral. The restriction was not ceremonial. It existed because of Windsor. Now Julian stood in the entry line. William recognized him and remembered the language from that late-night call. To the prince, this was not confusion. It was proof that the boundary had been challenged. The old wound had reopened in public view, and when William reached Harry at the entrance, every unspoken accusation from that private dinner came with him. William did not raise his voice when he reached Harry. That made the moment more dangerous. Aides stopped moving. Security officers looked away. Behind them, Julian Mercer remained frozen beside the entry barrier, caught between the estate gates and the royal convoy. The prince asked one direct question. Why had an unauthorized advisor been brought to a private family summit? The Duke answered just as directly. He had come because Harry no longer trusted the palace to let him speak alone. The cancellation had not yet reached the public, but everyone at Balmoral understood the truth. The summit had collapsed before it began. A summit was a private high-level meeting designed to settle serious disputes, and this one had been meant to address family access, security, and Harry's future relationship with the monarchy. Now its participants remained scattered between vehicles, waiting rooms, and the estate interior. Julian had never crossed the final security point. His name, however, had been added to a secondary transport manifest linked to Harry's vehicle. That document was the official record of who was traveling with a protected party. The addition allowed him to reach the formal entry line before staff discovered that he was missing from the approved guest list. William stopped within arm's reach of his brother. "You knew he wasn't cleared." Harry's face tightened. He said he needed someone nearby who understood the promises already made to him. The prince answered with a colder question. Were those promises being discussed with outsiders again? Harry's humiliation turned into fury. He accused William of using procedure to control the conversation before it could begin. The Duke said the palace always demanded trust, while offering him none in return. William refused to move. He said trust could not be rebuilt while one side kept changing the conditions. Then the future king placed the cancelled agenda folder on the bonnet of a waiting car. An agenda folder contained the meeting schedule, discussion points, and proposed decisions. In that moment, it became something else, a symbol of a conversation already destroyed. Julian stepped forward and tried to explain that he had never expected to enter the meeting room. A protection officer extended an arm and stopped him. The message was unmistakable. He was no longer being treated as a companion. He was being treated as the source of a security concern. Harry then admitted the detail William had feared most. Julian was carrying copies of earlier correspondence in case palace officials denied what had previously been offered. The confession changed everything. This had not been prepared as a simple family conversation. It had been prepared like a negotiation, complete with evidence. Charles appeared in the doorway and ordered both sons to stop. The king looked at the folder on the car, then at Julian behind the barrier. He now faced an impossible choice: overrule William or allow the summit to die. The brothers had reached an impasse, but the power to revive the meeting now rested with a father, whose authority was being tested by both sides at once. Charles had called the summit because he feared his sons were running out of time to repair what remained between them. Now he stood at Balmoral's entrance and saw the consequences of his own compromise. Harry demanded the right to feel protected. William demanded the right to keep royal discussions private. Both believed they were defending themselves. Both expected their father to validate them. Yet any decision the king made would strengthen one son, while convincing the other that he had been abandoned again. Charles still held the formal authority to order the meeting forward, change the guest arrangements, or uphold the cancellation. As host and head of the family, the monarch could make that decision immediately. Yet William had personally accepted responsibility for the summit's security framework, the rules controlling who could enter and what material could be brought inside. Overruling him would not merely reopen a meeting, it would publicly weaken the future king's judgment. Catherine remained inside with the agenda papers resting before her. The Princess of Wales understood why her husband had acted, because privacy had become the foundation of every fragile attempt to rebuild trust. Yet she also knew what sending Harry away could mean. This might be the last practical chance to stop years of hurt from becoming permanent separation. Charles returned alone to the drawing room and sat before the untouched tea. He read the opening statement prepared for the summit. Its first sentence promised a sincere effort to restore family trust. The king folded the page slowly. The words already felt hollow, because the family had failed to enter the same room without suspicion. William entered, but refused the empty chair opposite his father. The prince said the cancellation was not punishment. It was the consequence of a condition being broken. Charles heard certainty in his eldest son's voice, but he also heard grief. The future king had defended the boundary he created, yet doing so had cost him another chance with his brother. Charles then admitted the part he had not explained clearly. He had privately approved Harry bringing written correspondence, meaning past letters and messages that could support his position. The king had not approved another person. His attempt to make the Duke feel secure had created an ambiguity wide enough for Julian to enter the traveling party. Catherine joined them and chose her words carefully. She did not condemn Harry. Instead, she warned that forcing the summit forward would poison every sentence spoken inside it. How could reconciliation begin when one side had arrived prepared to prove the other wrong? Charles finally made his decision. The formal summit would remain cancelled. Harry, however, would be offered a private family conversation with no aides, files, or companions present. The official summit was over, but the absence of folders, advisors, and royal procedure would soon expose a conflict far more personal than anything written on the agenda. The cancellation spread through Balmoral without an announcement. Chairs were removed from the meeting room. Briefing papers were collected. Cars that had arrived for a day of negotiations remained idling outside. Then the estate gate began to close. Julian Mercer stood on one side, Harry on the other, and for several seconds neither man moved. The Duke had come expecting to challenge palace decisions. Instead, he was being asked to choose between his closest advisor and his own family. Staff moved quickly because the summit was no longer merely delayed. It was finished. Name cards disappeared from the table. Sealed folders were returned to a security case, and the lunch prepared for the participants was quietly canceled. A security case was a locked container used to protect confidential papers from unauthorized access. Every detail carried the same message. William's decision would not be reversed through pressure or confusion. Julian was instructed to leave the estate grounds immediately. He was offered transport to a nearby hotel, but he would receive no access to Harry's remaining schedule, private communications, or any revised family discussion. The restriction mattered, because even indirect contact could allow information from the estate to pass beyond those still inside. Harry walked toward the partially open barrier and spoke to his friend in a low, controlled voice. He promised that the palace would not be allowed to portray Julian as a threat. The advisor answered that the Duke should not leave. If Harry departed now, he warned, others would define the cancellation before he could defend himself. William carried the cost differently. Inside the corridor, the prince removed his tie, placed both hands on a table, and closed his eyes. He had protected the summit's boundaries, yet the victory felt empty. The future king had stopped an unauthorized guest from entering, but he had also pushed his brother closer to the gate. Julian's documents deepened the crisis. One file contained a detailed record of previous offers made to Harry concerning security, accommodation, and private family visits. The correspondence showed that the Duke had expected palace officials to challenge his memory of those promises. He had not arrived seeking only reconciliation. He had arrived prepared to defend a case. A senior aide then uncovered another troubling detail. Julian's name had been added to the transport list only hours before arrival through Harry's personal office. Balmoral's household had never received the change. The omission could have been a serious communication failure. It could also have been deliberate. Harry finally turned away from the gate. He asked to see William alone, handed his phone to a protection officer, and removed the correspondence from his coat. For the first time that day, nothing stood between the brothers, not an advisor, not a document, and not the machinery of the crown. There were no aides in the small room, no recording devices, no folders waiting to be opened. William stood near the window, while Harry remained beside the door, as though neither brother was prepared to move fully into the conversation. The summit had been designed to resolve questions of status, security, and access. Yet once every official layer had been stripped away, only one issue remained. The prince believed his brother no longer protected their private words. The Duke believed his family no longer protected him. Charles stayed away deliberately. The king understood that entering the room would turn every sentence into another appeal for judgment, with both sons waiting for him to declare who had been wronged most. He refused to become either referee or shield. For the first time that day, the brothers would have to face each other without royal authority standing between them. Harry had agreed to the private conversation under one condition: no formal decision would become binding without written follow-up. A binding decision was an agreement treated as final and enforceable by those involved. William accepted immediately. This was not a replacement summit. It was something more dangerous, a personal exchange with nowhere to hide. Harry broke the silence first. He asked why his brother had assumed the worst before speaking to him. William answered that trust rarely dies in one dramatic betrayal. It disappears slowly. Each time a private detail travels beyond the room. Each time reassurance is followed by another unexplained leak. Harry admitted he had asked Julian to come because he feared becoming overwhelmed. The Duke worried that pressure, guilt, and old family habits might push him into accepting conditions he would later regret. He did not apologize for needing support, but he acknowledged that bringing his friend without clear approval had placed the entire meeting under suspicion. William then revealed what the cancellation had truly cost. The prince had prepared a personal proposal, allowing Harry and his children greater private access to Balmoral during family periods. It was not a restoration of public duties. It was a quiet attempt to rebuild belonging. Seeing Julian at the gate convinced him that the offer could become part of an outside campaign before the family had even discussed it. Harry admitted that Julian knew he expected some proposal, but not its contents. He promised the correspondence brought to Balmoral would remain private. For the first time, the Duke accepted that his methods of self-protection could appear threatening to the people he still wanted to trust him. The brothers did not embrace. Instead, they agreed to remain silent about the failed summit for 48 hours, and to meet again alone. Charles watched them leave separately, but the king saw that the anger had gone. The private exchange prevented a total family rupture, yet beyond Balmoral's gates, the cancelled summit had already become a public symbol of the monarchy's deepest division. By evening, the world did not know what had been said behind the closed door. It knew only what one camera had captured: William standing rigid beside a cancelled summit folder, while Harry faced him across the Balmoral Drive, and Julian Mercer waited behind a security barrier. The image required no official explanation. To some, it showed a future king defending the monarchy. To others, it showed a brother using royal power to isolate his family. Within hours, the photograph became the story. The first sign of trouble came when vehicles left Balmoral earlier than scheduled. Correspondents noticed there was no closing statement, no confirmation of agreements, and no indication that the family meeting had even begun. Palace communications staff then issued a brief notice confirming that the planned gathering had not proceeded. A palace statement was an official message released to explain the monarchy's position, but this one explained almost nothing. Silence created the real storm. The palace refused to identify Julian or discuss the security concern that had stopped him at the gate. That refusal mattered, because secrecy left the public to decide whether Harry had changed the agreed conditions or whether William had used a technical rule to end the summit before difficult questions could be asked. The next morning, a national newspaper carried the Balmoral photograph across its front page beneath 4 words: "The guest who closed the gates." Harry appeared to be looking back toward Julian, while William held the abandoned folder against the car. One image transformed a private breakdown into a national argument. Crowds gathered near the railings outside Buckingham Palace as broadcasters repeated the cancellation. One woman held a handwritten sign reading, "Brothers before courtiers." Another defended the prince, insisting that private royal talks could not survive if unauthorized advisors arrived with confidential files. Their disagreement captured the larger conflict. Sympathy and suspicion now stood side by side. A television presenter pushed the story further. During a recorded broadcast, she called the crisis a battle over who is allowed inside the royal family's circle of trust. The phrase dominated the coverage and shifted attention away from Julian's identity. The real question was no longer who he was. It was why neither brother felt safe without controlling the room. Charles watched the reports without sound. The king paused on the photograph of his sons and understood the cruelty of public judgment. The world saw confrontation. It did not see the private conversation that had prevented a complete rupture. William approved a carefully worded statement accepting responsibility for canceling the summit, while refusing to condemn Harry personally. The future king had drawn a boundary, not declared victory. The world had chosen its image of the crisis, but the monarchy still had to decide what the cancellation would mean when the cameras moved on. The Balmoral summit never began. No agreement was signed, no photograph of reconciliation was released. Yet the cancellation achieved something the planned meeting may not have delivered. It forced William and Harry to confront the reason every formal attempt at peace had failed. One brother feared that private words would escape the room. The other feared entering that room without protection. Julian Mercer's appearance did not destroy their relationship. It exposed the boundary they had never honestly discussed and compelled them to define it. The outcome was now final. The formal summit remained cancelled. Julian would receive no access to future royal family meetings, and discussions concerning security, residences, or private visits were removed from the institutional agenda. That agenda was the official list of matters intended for formal royal consideration. By removing those subjects, the family accepted that personal trust had to come before policy. Charles understood that forcing a larger settlement would only recreate the same conflict. The king authorized a narrower arrangement, allowing his sons to meet privately at a later date, without advisors and without binding decisions. Those decisions would have carried official weight. Their absence gave the brothers room to speak without feeling trapped by every word. Charles returned to the drawing room and unfolded the abandoned opening statement. The monarch removed the sentence promising immediate reconciliation. In its place, He wrote that trust must be rebuilt through conduct rather than declarations. The change was small, but it carried the truth he had resisted for years. Unity could not be announced into existence. William did not celebrate. The prince looked across the empty conference table and admitted to Catherine that protecting the institution had sometimes deepened his loneliness. The princess listened before answering that a boundary only mattered if it protected the possibility of future honesty. Her words did not erase his pain, but they gave his decision a purpose beyond punishment. Harry faced his own reckoning. The Duke sent Julian a private message confirming that no future family meeting would include him. He thanked his friend for standing beside him, yet accepted that personal loyalty could not determine access to confidential royal discussions. The deeper truth was now impossible to avoid. William had not rejected his brother completely. He had rejected reconciliation, built on pressure, surprise guests, competing records, and unofficial witnesses. Harry had not been defeated. He had been forced to recognize that self-protection could become another form of distance. Balmoral ended one failed method of royal peacemaking. Charles could no longer manufacture unity. Harry could no longer arrive prepared for a legal contest. William could no longer pretend procedure alone could heal emotional damage. The gates closed on a summit that never happened, but not forever on the brothers. The meeting failed. The boundary held. Peace remained possible, but only after trust became more important than control. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.